like to introduce our next presenter, Michael Pocock, who is Senior Researcher at the UK Centre for Ecology and Hydrology. Hello, Michael.
Hello.
And going to talk to you about recording nature where it matters, the DECIDE project for precision citizen science. So over to you, Michael, and nice to meet you.
Thank you very much. And can you see that okay?
Yes, I can. Yeah, I think people will be able to see that. Yeah, lots of thumbs up.
Okay, brilliant, fantastic. Okay, thank you ever so much for this invitation to talk. So as Neil said, I'll be talking about this idea of precision citizen science and how we are beginning to explore how this could actually be developed in practice. So we all know that, of course, that volunteer collected biodiversity data is really valuable. It's superb for helping us assess the state of nature, and we've seen this in a range of reports and studies recently, and in particular to assess the impact of interventions. We also know that it benefits individuals. Reference was made to that earlier, and we looked at this formally within a citizen science experiment about the value of citizen science last year, the Nature Up Close project, showing the benefits in terms of people's well-being to being involved in monitoring. And as we heard about earlier, ideally these data support action for nature by individuals and by organisations. We also know that citizen science data are collected in a wide variety of different ways, from the much more structured scientific sort of approach to sampling through to the unstructured type of recording. We know that a lot of the data, places like the NBN Atlas, will be more on the unstructured side of this. All of this is great, and we can see the millions upon millions of records which come in, covering such a wide variety of different species, and the ways in which we can make use of those data. However, we do know, and it's really clear, that unstructured recording is spatially uneven, and we can see this at a large scale. And so it's not going to be news to anyone that there's far more recording which goes on in the south of England than there is up in the Highlands of Scotland or the Midlands of Wales. But also, if we look at the really local scale, it's also incredibly spatially uneven. These are just a few, or the butterfly records submitted via iRecord, and I think many other data sources would show a very similar patchy pattern to this in terms of the distribution of records. And so the point then is, are those records being made in the places where we really need to know most about data, or sorry, know most about nature? To put it another way, all the records that we get are valuable, but we don't simply need more records. We need more informative records. And so for me for data users, the question is how do you define more informative? And for me as a recorder, the big question is, well, how do I choose where to go? And so I'm going to briefly mention a couple of projects, one of which is this one, the Targeting Revisits map. So this was a fairly simple, small scale project which we did, and we were focusing on a few groups of less well recorded taxa, the groups that not so many people go out and record. And we provided this interactive map, and the simple ask from this project was, can you visit the map, look at the 1 kilometre squares, and can you make the pink squares, which are those where we've only got records in 1 year, to turn to green, so indicating that we've got records in more than 1 year. And this is really valuable because sites which have been revisited are more valuable for trend modelling. They provide that more improved data. So if you're interested in seeing this and giving feedback, then do please visit the Biological Records Centre website, where you can find out a bit more information and give us feedback via the tool there. But we've also been looking at this in a slightly different way through a much bigger investment from NERC through the DECIDE project. And this has been really thinking about this thing about recording nature where it matters, and it's got those two elements to it, the how do we support the recorders and where does it matter where we make the records. As you can see, this project has drawn on a wide range of different people, and I think it's been really exciting and productive in order to pull on expertise within social science, computer science, thinking about big data and visual communication, as well as maybe the more traditional disciplines in our sort of field of ecology and biostatistics. We've been working with a few large-scale collectors of data, so including butterfly conservation and 2 local record centres as well. Throughout this project, co-design is at the heart of it, and I'll explain a bit how as we go on. So thinking about that, what need? In terms of recording nature where it matters, where does it matter? Well, what we know is that we have got this good information on the large scale trends, and we can do national reporting, state of nature type reporting for a wide range of different species. We also know that if we're interested in particular sites in terms of conservation or development risk or things like this, we can either have access to records for site level decisions, or we can go out and collect those. But we've done some work with a wide range of data users, actually going beyond the usual suspects. And as we've talked to them, what we've discovered is that they lack some of this comprehensive, but also fine scale maps of natural capital, biodiversity richness, things like this, to help inform this more regional decision making. I think Rosie gave some examples of that with the National Trust data, but there are a wide range of other people who are thinking about these sorts of regional decision making at a strategic level. We also found that recorders lack tools to guide their recording. So for me, if I'm happy to spend at least some of my recording time out in the field, making records where it really matters, I've got no way of really knowing where I should go. So one of the solutions, and the solution that we've explored in inside, is to use species distribution models. So we'll get a whole load of covariate layers, including many from Earth observation and satellite data, and combine that with species records. And then for each species, we can get a predicted distribution where we think that species ought to occur. We've done this in a high throughput way, so we can do it for many species at this fine resolution of the 1 hectare scale. But as well as predicted distribution, we also get maps of uncertainty around that prediction, and that's really important. And so when we look to identify priorities for recording, we can look at where the models of species distribution are least confident. It's that idea of looking where the models have greatest uncertainty, and that's the idea of adaptive sampling. Combine that across all the species of interest. We can then look at the layer as to where the observations have already been made over the recent past. And the difference between the two is a metric that we've come up with, which is thinking about where, or informing people about where it's best to collect new observations. And then we've put that into a visual tool, a map-based tool, so that people who want to discover these new places to record wildlife, to make records where it matters most, can explore the Decide tool, identify these places with highest priority for recording, as shown in the colours on the map there. And then they can make a choice. They can choose to visit some of those locations. And what we're asking people to do is to record the species that they see, ideally all the species that they see of a particular taxonomic group, and do that using existing apps and websites. We're not trying to create yet another species recording tool. What we're trying to do is do something new and provide that information to recorders that's not currently available. Within this, we've also developed pins to provide specific suggestions about places where it looks like it's really valuable for people to go and where it's accessible, so based on things like footpath data. And we can automatically generate text in pop-out boxes to inform people about what to expect, both in terms of the conditions, the accessibility, and the numbers of species that they might see. So far, we've done this for butterflies and day-flying moths, and next year we're going to be expanding to look at the several hundred species of nocturnal moth as well. So as I said, co-design is really important within this, and so throughout the tool we've been encouraging people to explore the tool but give us their feedback, and this has actually been really vital in helping to shape how we've developed the tool. We've also run things like focus groups with recorders, both keen recorders and new recorders as well. So please do explore the tool, click on the gold button and give us some of your feedback. You can also join the general mailing lists and particular co-design mailing lists that we've got, where we'll send people particular questions to really help guide some of our thinking as we're developing this. And as next year goes on, what we're wanting to do, this is going to be really valuable to get people's involvement in the co-design, because we want to develop feedback to recorders that's even more relevant, accessible, actionable and appealing. And I think the neat thing about this is that, yes, we're doing it for butterflies, but this could be used for a wide range of different species data, but also environmental data at a much wider level. So even thinking about nudging people to record water quality at particular times or places where it's most valuable. And then the second thing that we're doing is we're doing this co-design with data users. I said about having the fine scale comprehensive maps of measures of natural capital. We've produced a first proof of concept, making this available, those maps of modelled butterfly richness. And over the course of the remainder of the winter, we're going to be doing quite intensive co-design with data end users. So if you're interested in being involved in some of this or finding out a bit more about this, then please do email me for more information. And so I think this is really important, thinking about this whole the citizen science and the biological recording as a whole system, where you've got these interactions between people and nature and data. And we hope that this is going to become something really valuable to help guide recorders and also make the very best of the data that we've got. So thank you very much.
Excellent, really interesting project. Thank you for that. We do have one question that's come in. Actually, might be some more coming in as well. The potential disconnect between science professional community and Joe public, and this is even linked to sort of conspiracy potential reason for conspiracy theories around climate change and lockdowns and other things. Do you see the citizen science community as a way to reduce this disconnect, or could it further contribute more people to feeling they know better than others? quite a heady question, that.
Yeah, gosh, that's quite a big one. I suppose I first got into citizen science, and even for me as a scientist, got involved in public engagement with science because I believed that actually this opening things up would increase, I hoped it would increase trust, and I wanted to play a part in that. So I think that would be my vision, that opening this up is, I hope, would increase people's trust, and I think also increase opening up more of the process of not just data collection, but also analysis, I think is important. And I think that leads on to also that fact of people feeling empowered to make decisions about their own actions. And so thinking about how can we as a community provide not simply data back to people, but the sorts of information that really help people make good decisions, which might be done at a very local scale. And I think all of this, making our citizen science more actionable, I suppose, is something that's really important.
It was touched on this morning in one of the talks, was that the importance of people understanding how the data is being used as well. So you need those users, you need that feedback loop, don't you, to make people feel the agency of what they're doing.
Yeah, and some of that becomes a bit of a big data question. And so some of the work that we're doing next year under Decide will be using a bit more of those principles and exploring artificial intelligence as ways of being able to really boost that communication, because understanding where your data is used and how impactful it has been, I think is something that will be really important to an increasing number of recorders.
Yeah. Another question here was, do people, when people are asked to go and look for something, do you take into account times when people may have tried to record species but didn't find anything?
Yes, this is the really big issue, and I think it's that recording of absences. And I think actually one of the things that does is that gets down to back to the heart of the motivation and why people do this as well, and why people record, how people record. It's very easy to think as a scientist and go, oh yes, of course, when people go out for a trip and don't see anything that's valuable. But most of my recording is actually not done as a formal trip. So I think we can get smarter about thinking about that, and we can get smarter in terms of the ways of doing analysis that bring in the strengths of presence absence data and presence only data, and even maybe abundance data as well, and combining those together within single modelling frameworks, I think is really valuable. But I think some of these questions about recording absences will always be challenging. That is partly why we encourage people to record any species that they see, or any and all species that they see when recording through prompted by the DECIDE project, because that helps us infer the species that they didn't see.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's it, Michael. So thank you very much for that. I mean, it's really interesting, and it's interesting how it all ties up with what was talked about this morning. I don't know if you were listening to the talks this morning, but it all fits together.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael.